Welcome to part 2 of why the mid-90s to mid-2000s was the greatest era in baseball history. There was a ton covered in part 1, so make sure to check that video out, link in the description below. There's no denying that baseball's popularity has gone down in the past 15 years, and MLB is trying to get back to where it was then. We have a lot to talk about in this video, and with that being said, let's get started. We'll start this video off by talking about what I like to call the analytics stunlock of current baseball. As of 2020, there are 33% fewer balls in play than an average game in 2005. Batting average is a thing of the past, and it's all about launch angle and exit velo. From 1994 to 2006, the entire league batting average did not drop below 261, and it was reaching as high as 271. In fact, in 2010, it dipped below 260 for the first time since 1992. This trend doesn't get much better after 2010. We are now in our 14th straight year where the league average is in the mid to low 250s. To make matters even worse, in the last 5 out of the 6 seasons from 2018 to 2023, the league average has been in the 240s, which we haven't seen since 1972. So far in the young 2024 season, the league average is at exactly 239. There have only been 3 times it's been 240 or lower in baseball history. That was in 1968, 1908, and 1888. On-base percentage is also trending down. Some of the worst on-base seasons of all time have been happening since 2010. But what does this mean for the mid-90s to mid-2000s? Well, there was simply more action happening on the field back then. More singles, doubles, triples, and walks. Less striking out on average, and more stolen bases. Lineup construction just made more sense. We didn't have analytics telling us exactly how to set lineups up. It just made sense to have a true leadoff hitter and table setters for your power bats in the middle of your lineup. Just about the only thing that has gone up in the 2010s and 2020s has been the home run surge. But this just reinforces why the mid-90s to mid-2000s was the greatest era ever. It was a time that we just simply had it all. In fact, between 1994 and 2007, every single year in that span are a part of the top 27 seasons of all time where the most home runs were hit. And listen, yes, I get it. It was the steroid era. Of course those numbers make sense, but at the time, again, ignorance was bliss and we were enjoying it. But make no mistake, the offensive numbers did not affect pitchers much. We saw some of the most dominant pitchers in history thrive during this span. And it wasn't all about fastball velo either. I once heard a comment made that now what we have are throwers and not pitchers, and I'm starting to believe that there may be some truth to that. Tommy John surgeries, again, are on wholesale these days, and starting pitchers are pitching about 6 innings before they get pulled. The art of pitching was just different back then. We got to see the Braves' fearsome rotation of Maddox, Glavine, and Smoltz, hotheads like Pedro Martinez and Roger Clemens. Batters would talk about just trying to get in and out of their at-bats versus Randy Johnson as quickly as possible. Who could forget the Oakland A's? That's right, John Fisher, the Oakland A's, and their big three consisting of Barry Zito, Mark Mulder, and Tim Hudson. Every team felt like they had a bona fide ace up their sleeve, from Johan Santana to Roy Halladay to Roy Oswalt. Let's not forget about the closers of that generation either. There was Trevor Hoffman, K-Rod, Billy Wagner, Eric Gagne, John Wetland, Joe Nathan, and of course, the greatest of all time, and as of the recording of this video, the only player in baseball history to go into the Hall of Fame unanimously, Mariano Rivera. Nowadays, with pitcher injuries and how hot and cold relievers can be year to year, we really took watching the consistency of these guys for granted. As discussed in part 1 of this video series, dominance was the key theme for this era. It wasn't just the Yankees dominating either. From individual performances to team performances, there was something special happening for most fan bases and the casual crowd to follow. One show of dominance was the battle for first place in the AL West in 2001 between the Seattle Mariners and the Oakland A's. Let's start with the A's, a team going into the season with huge expectations after winning the division in 2000. They had their big three in the starting rotation of Zito, Mulder, and Hudson, a fantastic bullpen with Jim Messier, Chad Bradford, and Jason Isringhausen, and their offense was loaded. They had Miguel Tejada, Eric Chavez, the reigning AL MVP Jason Giambi. They also added Johnny Damon to solidify the offense even further. However, you still got to play the games, and to start the season, there wasn't a lot to cheer for. The A's started off just 2-10, and by the halfway point, they were 39-42. This surprisingly was not because of their offense, but the starting pitching, which flat out unexpectedly sucked. And because of that, it put them just about 21 games back behind the Mariners, and all hope seemed lost. However, out of nowhere, everything just clicked. Their pitching and offense were firing on all cylinders and dominating. Already on a hot streak, the A's added Jermaine Dye via trade in late July to bolster their offense even further. Over the final 81 games of the season, the A's went 63-18, which is still a record, and won 29 of their final 33 games to cap off the most dominant second half MLB has ever seen. They ended up going 102-60 on the season. Enough to win the division, right? Well, a lot of baseball history was made in 2001, and one of those things was the Mariners, a team that absolutely went off. No one had ever seen anything like this, fielding essentially an entire all-star team with 8 players going to the Midsummer Classic at their home stadium of Safeco Field. They set the record for the most wins since 1901, going 116-46. Want some more stats? Out of all those wins, 59 were won by 4 or more runs. Unsurprisingly, they scored the most runs and allowed the fewest runs in baseball that year. They had a winning record against every single American League team they faced that year and went 12-6 against National League teams. The only team that gave them any trouble at all was the Oakland A's. The Mariners went 10-9 against them during the regular season. But hey, both teams made it into the postseason and were looking like absolute juggernauts. The Mariners, led by manager Lou Piniella, had a roster with Edgar Martinez, Brett Boone, Mike Cameron, Scott Podsednik, Jeff Nelson, Freddie Garcia, Jamie Moyer, John Olerud, closer Kazuhiro Sasaki, and of course, Ichiro Suzuki. Ichiro, being the first ever Japanese-born position player in MLB history, had his own record-setting season. He won the AL Rookie of the Year, AL MVP, AL batting title, a Gold Glove, a Silver Slugger, and was the most voted player in the All-Star Game. If you want a further deep dive on Ichiro's 2001 season, I did a video on that, link in the description below. However, with all the hype of each team, they both fell to the Yankees in the playoffs. The A's lost to them in 5 games in the ALDS, where the infamous flip play was born, and the Mariners would lose to the Yankees in the ALCS in 5 games as well. Even so, these were 2 legendary seasons that broke records that still stand today. It was really something special to watch and made baseball that much more hype. The big market teams like the Yankees and Red Sox weren't the only shows in baseball to watch. A lot of teams had something special going on in such a small amount of time. Even when things fall apart, there were plenty of interesting stories to tell from this era. Keeping up with the Oakland A's, there was this little thing called Moneyball that happened. After the 2001 season, the A's just simply couldn't afford their stars. 01 was their one-and-done shot with the incredible roster that they assembled. They lost Jason Giambi, Johnny Damon, and Jason Isringhausen to free agency. With their 3 biggest pieces gone to the Yankees, Red Sox, and Cardinals, expectations were very low for the A's. They even made some trades and signings for a bunch of players that no other team cared about. As they were constructing their roster, long story short, the A's and their GM Billy Beane wanted players that were cheap, flew under the radar, and did one specific thing very well.
What can he do? Guys, check the reports or I'm gonna point at people. He gets on base. He can get on base.
So he walks a lot.
He gets on base a lot. Rocco, do I care if it's a walk or a hit? Pete?
You do not.
I do not.
They marched into the 2002 season with a very unassuming roster compared to the year before. Nobody expected them to surpass their 102-win season the year prior, and well, it was fairly unremarkable to start the season at first. Anytime they would get on a small win streak, they would go on a terrible losing stretch. Overall, they played mostly .500 baseball until early July, where they went on a 16-1 tear to get within a few games of first place. But right after that stretch, they went right back to playing about .500 ball for the next month or so. Then, starting August 13th, something special started. The A's began a then American League record 20-game win streak. Everything was working incredibly: pitching, offense, and defense. The 20th win of that streak came from a bottom-of-the-9th game, tied at 11, pinch-hit solo home run by an unlikely hero in Scott Hatteberg off the Royals' Jason Grimsley. They would finish the season surpassing their 2001 record by 1 game, going 103-59, with Miguel Tejada winning the AL MVP and Barry Zito winning the AL Cy Young Award. They finished 4 games ahead of the Angels, who went 99-63, and the Mariners, who went 93-69. The AL West was wild that year, and it was the Angels who went on to win their first World Series in dramatic fashion. They were down 3-2 against Barry Bonds and the San Francisco Giants. In Game 6 of that series, they were down by 5 runs and came back late to force a Game 7 and ultimately win it all. Some fun facts about the Angels this season: it was the first year they debuted their current-day uniforms, team colors, and the Halo logo. But some bad news: the Walt Disney Company sold the team to Art Moreno, who took over in 2003. In any case, what the Oakland A's did certainly had other teams take notice. The legend of Moneyball was born, and now a lot of people blame the analytics stun lock that every team has these days because of it. However, what the A's did with what they had was unprecedented, so much so that a book and a movie was made about it. Speaking of movies, let's talk about baseball media and the incredible baseball movies we got to live through. Baseball as a culture was thriving, from commercials to video games to the big screen. You know baseball is doing well when just going or watching MLB games isn't enough. The public just wanted more baseball anything, and we were truly spoiled with the movies that we got. It's just something that's missing these days completely. Not only did we get baseball movies, but MLB players, managers, announcers, and even owners played roles in these movies. Some of these roles were pretty prominent too. I could go on a tangent on how this ties to players not marketing themselves anymore like they clearly did in this era, but we'll save that for a video in the future. I like to think that baseball movies helped MLB's popularity more than MLB did for itself. Even though the first three movies I'm about to talk about are from '88 and '89, they really paved the way for the '90s and 2000s baseball movies. Basically, within a year, we got Bull Durham, Field of Dreams, and Major League with Bob Uecker playing a role in it. From there, we got the classics like A League of Their Own. Rookie of the Year had Bobby Bonilla, Pedro Guerrero, and Barry Bonds even struck out in a scene. The Sandlot, Angels in the Outfield, Little Big League, where Randy Johnson and Ken Griffey Jr. had roles. Lou Piniella was in it, Sandy Alomar Jr., Paul O'Neill, Rafael Palmeiro, Tim Raines, Pudge Rodriguez, Chris Berman. I mean, the list goes on and on. The Scout, a movie that felt big league with cameos by Tim McCarver, John Sterling, Ozzie Smith, Steve Garvey, Keith Hernandez, and even George Steinbrenner. Mr. Baseball had Frank Thomas in it. The Benchwarmers had Reggie Jackson. Summer Catch had a huge cast of cameos with Hank Aaron, Carlton Fisk, Ken Griffey Jr., and more. Fever Pitch had a ton of Red Sox players in it. Mr. 3000 was another great baseball movie that had Ron Darling in it, and can't forget the Bad News Bears remake and one of my personal favorites, The Rookie. But with that, the comedy and biographical baseball movie seems to have disappeared completely. After roughly 2010 or so, the only baseball movies we've gotten are dramas or documentaries. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. Those genres are cool in their own regard, especially the documentaries. But if you felt like something was missing from baseball movies, well, here it is. There's simply no more comedy or biographical baseball content being made anymore. Since 1990, regardless of genre, we were getting an average of 3 to 4 baseball-themed movies a year, and now it's about 2 per year. The most recent baseball comedy movie that was released was in 2016. It was called Undrafted, and it received pretty poor reviews. The last few biographical movies were Moneyball in 2011, 42 in 2013, which is a great movie if you haven't seen it, Spaceman in 2016, and The Hill that released in 2023. All of these are great movies, but they've come very few and far in between. Continuing with media, can we talk about baseball commercials for a minute? ESPN was absolutely on fire with some of the skits they'd come up with major leaguers. It really made you feel more connected to the players as people. Teams would put out pretty amazing commercials too. I'm not really sure why they stopped doing that in general, but they should definitely bring it back. It seems like MLB has no idea how to market its players or its product anymore, but I won't get too much into that now. That'll also be a future video that we can deep dive into. We'll end this video with some of the most impressive record-breaking streaks that we may never see again. Let's start with Cal Ripken Jr.'s consecutive game streak of 2,632 games played in a row. In an age where everyone, especially superstars, get a day off and injuries seem to happen more and more often, it makes Cal's streak even that much more impressive, especially playing shortstop, a premium position that requires arguably the most athleticism on the field. He not only beat Lou Gehrig's streak of 2,130 games in a row that stood for 52 years, Cal absolutely eclipsed it by 502 games. That's a lot of baseball. He started the streak on May 30th, 1982, and it ended on September 19th, 1998. But there were 2 times that his streak almost ended prematurely. According to Cal himself, the closest he ever came to not playing during the streak was the day after a benches-clearing brawl against the Mariners. He twisted his knee during the brawl, but ultimately decided he wanted to play through it. The second time was during the 1994 to 1995 players' strike. Team owners were planning on using replacement players to keep the game going, but not Orioles owner Peter Angelos. He announced that the Orioles would straight up rather not field a team at all than have Cal's streak end. However, as we all know, the rest of the season was canceled due to the strike, so the streak was saved. He ended up breaking Gehrig's streak on September 6, 1995. But how did the streak end for Cal Ripken Jr.? On September 20th, 1998, he made the decision himself to not play. It happened to be the Orioles' last home game of the season, and let's be real, we'll never see anyone come close to breaking that record. Another wild streak that happened during this era was Eric Gagne's save streak. If you aren't familiar with his game, I'll give you a quick rundown. He made his debut in 1999, a few years after getting Tommy John surgery. He then spent the next few years as an okay starter until the Dodgers made him their closer in 2002. He didn't just throw hard, he threw really hard and was one of the few in the league that could reach 100+ miles per hour. In just his first 2 years as a closer, he already had 100 saves and was the fastest to reach that mark. In 2003, Gagne notched the highest strikeout ratio ever for a closer, striking out 137 batters in 82 innings pitched. In just 03 alone, he had 55 consecutive saves. So combined with his 8 straight saves to end the 2002 season and the 21 straight saves to start the 2004 season, Gagne saved 84 consecutive games. The entire duration of that streak was from August 28, 2002 to July 3, 2004. That is just an insane statistic, not blowing a single game in 84 consecutive chances. During his 03 season, he ended up winning the Cy Young Award and also came in 6th for MVP voting, a rare feat for a reliever. The closest anyone has gotten to the save streak since was Zach Britton with 60 consecutive saves from October 1st, 2015 to August 21st, 2017. Last but not least, the final streak we'll talk about is the Braves. As far as the divisional winners were concerned, no team in baseball has been as dominant as the Braves. They have absolutely owned whatever division they've been in since the 4 and 6 division alignments were introduced to baseball. They won their division 14 straight times. This started in 1991 when they were in the NL West until 1993. Yeah, divisions were pretty weird back then. Still not sure why the Braves were in the West, but anyway, that's what happened. So, their streak ended in 2005, 1991 to 2005. This was all due to a high-powered offense and a pitching trio that was seemingly unstoppable of Maddox, Glavine, and Smoltz. In fact, no team has even come close to a streak like the Braves. The closest would be the Yankees winning their division 9 times in a row. In 1995, after the strike-shortened season, the Braves, with Chipper Jones' first full season as a full-time starter, and the Indians faced off in the World Series. The Indians had the best record in baseball by going 144, and the Braves had the second best record at 90 and 54. A true battle of the best AL and NL teams from the regular season all the way to the playoffs. The Braves went on to beat the Indians 4-2 and brought Atlanta its first World Series title. Let's just be real. The National League in the 90s belonged to the Braves. It's just a fact. They went to the World Series in 91, 92, won it all in 95, went back in 96 against the Yankees, and then again in 99 against the Yankees. So there you have it, part 2 of what made the greatest era in baseball. Don't worry, there's going to be a trilogy for this series, so if you feel like I missed out on anything, leave a comment below on some topics you'd like to see me cover in part 3. Thanks for watching. What were some of your favorite moments from baseball in the 90s and 2000s? Leave a comment below. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you'd like to see more videos like these. It really helps the channel out a ton. I'll catch you in the next video. Later.